When you think of ancient Rome, you probably picture spectacle and brutality. And you're not wrong. Punishments were the stuff of nightmares. And they weren't just about ending a life, they were about sending a message. Crucifixion was a public horror show designed to terrify anyone who dared to defy Rome, being thrown to lions in the Colosseum. That was considered primetime entertainment. But even among these famous terrors, some Romans found new, more personal and honestly, more twisted ways to kill. One wealthy Roman in particular came up with a punishment so uniquely horrifying that it involved his own private collection of ravenous flesh-eating eels. This isn't a myth. It's the true story of Publius Vettius Pollio and the man who turned his pets into executioners. So how does a man get away with something this monstrous? First, you have to understand the world he was living in. The Roman Empire in the 1st century BCE was a society of insane extremes. While the elite lived in a kind of luxury we can barely imagine, a massive chunk of the population, as much as 40%, were slaves. And under Roman law, a slave wasn't a person. They were property, no different than a chair or a cow. A Roman master held the power of life and death over his slaves. He could beat them, brand them, or literally work them to death without facing any legal trouble. While killing your own slave was seen as a bad financial decision, the law was clear. All things are allowed to be done to a slave. This absolute power created the perfect environment for cruelty to fester, letting the darkest impulses of the Roman elite run wild. And into this world stepped Vettius Pollio, a man who would become infamous for taking that cruelty to a whole new level. Let's talk about our villain, Publius Vettius Pollio. Today we'd probably call him New Money. He was the son of a former slave who clawed his way up the social ladder to one of Rome's highest classes. He made an obscene amount of money partly by managing the province of Asia for his close friend, the Emperor Augustus. Pollio was a man of extravagant taste. He owned a sprawling coastal villa so huge that the poet Ovid called it like a city. It was a palace designed to scream, "I am massively wealthy and powerful." But behind the marble columns and beautiful gardens, Pollio had a reputation for being legendarily cruel, especially to his many slaves. But his most notorious habit was kept in a specially built pool on his estate. A pool he filled with monsters. It wasn't unusual for Roman nobles to keep fish ponds or piscinae to have fresh seafood for their banquets, but Pollio's pond was different. This wasn't for fine dining, it was for death. He stocked his with giant moray eels. A moray eel is basically a swimming nightmare. They can grow up to 10 feet long with thick, serpentine bodies. Their jaws are filled with sharp, hooked teeth that are perfect for gripping and tearing flesh. They're naturally aggressive and known to attack people. But Pollio took it a step further. Ancient writers tell us he got his eels accustomed to the taste of human flesh by throwing condemned slaves into the water. The eels learned to associate a body hitting the water with a meal. This pond wasn't just a garden feature, it was a custom-built torture device, a symbol of his sadistic power over the people he owned. For any slave in Pollio's house, that shimmering water was a constant, terrifying reminder of what one tiny mistake could cost them. The scene is a lavish dinner party at Pollio's magnificent villa. and the guest of honor is the most powerful man in the world, Emperor Augustus himself. You can just imagine the scene. Priceless decorations, the finest food and wine flowing everywhere. You can also imagine the slaves serving them, moving with terrified precision, knowing their master's explosive temper. A key part of the display of wealth was Pollio's collection of drinking glasses, delicate, exquisite goblets made of crystal, each one worth a fortune. During the feast, a young slave carrying a tray, probably shaking in the presence of the emperor, lost his grip. A single crystal goblet fell and shattered on the floor. The entire room went silent. Pollio absolutely exploded with rage over one broken cup. His verdict was instant and absolute. He ordered his guards to grab the slave. The sentence? Death. He was to be thrown into the pool and eaten alive by the moray eels. So a man is about to be ripped apart by eels for breaking a glass. It's insane. If you think this stuff is as fascinating as I do and you want to support more dives into the dark side of history, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps bring more of these unbelievable true stories to light. Now back to the banquet from hell. As the guards dragged the condemned slave away, he did the only thing he could. He broke free and threw himself at the feet of the one person in the room more powerful than his master, Emperor Augustus. And what he begged for is what makes this story legendary. The slave knew he was going to die. He didn't ask for his life, he just begged to be killed in a less horrifying way. He pleaded not to be fed to the eels. The thought of that death was so terrifying that a quick sword stroke seemed like a mercy. The whole banquet held its breath. Augustus, who had probably heard rumors about his friend's cruelty, was now seeing it with his own eyes. He was disgusted. At first he tried to reason with Pollio, asking him to just spare the boy. But Pollio, arrogant and furious, refused. He actually reminded the emperor that the slave was his property and he could do whatever he wanted with it. All eyes snapped to Augustus. A citizen had just openly defied the emperor of Rome. What would he do? Augustus didn't negotiate. What he did next was a cold, calculated masterclass in power. Realizing that Pollio valued his crystal more than a human life, the emperor gave a shocking order. He commanded his servants to bring him all of Vedius Pollio's priceless goblets. Every last one. As a horrified Pollio watched, Augustus had the entire irreplaceable collection smashed to pieces right there on the floor. The message couldn't have been clearer. If breaking one cup was a crime worthy of death, then the emperor himself was now guilty 100 times over. Pollio could hardly execute his slave for a crime the emperor had just committed on a massive scale. Humiliated and totally outplayed, Pollio had to back down, but Augustus wasn't finished. He ordered the slave to be freed on the spot. And in a final symbolic move, some sources say he commanded that the infamous eel pond be filled in, destroying Pollio's private execution chamber for good. The cruelty was over. Vedius Pollio never really recovered from being so publicly humiliated. He died in 15 BCE, and in what seems like a desperate last-ditch effort to get back in the emperor's good graces, he left a huge chunk of his estate, including his famous villa, to Augustus. Augustus's final act of judgment was one of complete erasure. He had Pollio's decadent Roman house torn down to its foundations, claiming he was building a public structure. In its place, he built a beautiful public portico named after his own wife, Livia, wiping the memory of Pollio's House of Horrors right off the map. But let's be clear, this story is a dramatic exception. Augustus's move was probably as much about slapping down an arrogant citizen who dared to defy him as it was about saving a life. For the thousands of other slaves in the Roman Empire, there was no emperor at their dinner table to step in. Their fates were sealed by a system that saw them as things, not people. And while lions and crucifixion were tools of the state, the flesh-eating eels, that was a special private kind of cruelty, dreamed up by one man with way too much power. The tale of Vettius Pollio is more than just a gruesome story. It's a window into the absolute extremes of Roman society, of obscene wealth, unchecked power, and a cruelty so theatrical it's hard to believe it was real. But it's also a story of unexpected defiance and a stunning imperial smackdown that became legendary. Augustus saved one man and punished another. But was it a genuine act of moral outrage? Or was it just a cold political calculation to remind a powerful subject of his place? What do you think this bizarre and gruesome episode truly tells us about justice and power? Let me know your take down in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this one. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story from the past.